Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Golden Llamashow. We have today with us Kam Knight, who is a coach, international speaker, and a best-selling author of a dozen books in the area of mental performance and personal mastery. Kam, when he is not coaching or writing, he's traveling, and he has traveled to over 100 countries around the world. How are you, Kam?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for that awesome introduction.
Thank you for being here. I think we're gonna have amazing conversation. Why did you choose your expertise?
I don't want to say I actually chose it. I had a question that lingered in my mind essentially my whole life, which was, why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it. Now, at the time, there were no clear answers. The best answers I heard was beliefs or that I needed motivation or discipline. And yes, I think those things are important, but I always felt like there was more to it. And over the past 15 years, that question lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why can't I just do this damn thing so I can get the result that I want? And so in my journey of trying to answer this question, I read books, attended seminars, got coaching, and really went to the furthest reaches of the globe to this answer. And that's really how I fell into teaching about this concept that I call internal resistance.
Internal resistance? Who's resisting who?
It's we are resisting ourselves. So what I realized is that there's a part of our brain that's designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind that's built to keep us from growing. And what I call this part is resistance. It's a wall that we keep hitting every time we want to do something, but we can't. And so it's essentially one part of our brain creates wants and desires, and another part allows us to act on that desire. So essentially, we're resisting our own self by one part of our brain resisting our want and what we want to do, if that makes sense.
It actually doesn't make sense at all because I'm thinking, and that might be a very tricky question. The brain
Yeah.
works like I have both legs. One leg wants to go left and the other leg wants to go right. It doesn't make any sense.
In a way, that's what it is. So it really helps to understand that there isn't just one you inside you. There's actually multiple yous, and those yous have different wants and drives and desires. And it may seem hard to believe, but it's possible for the different yous that we to have conflicting wants. So one part of us would want one thing, like maybe we want to become a public speaker. But another part that is more shy and reserved doesn't want that attention. And so now there's a battle. So one part really wants this thing, another part is holding us back.
So we shouldn't make any bets on those voices. How do we know which voice is good, which voice is bad?
That's a challenge. That's a challenge of being human. One of the things I tell people is that the challenge of motivation and desire and going after what we want is knowing the voice of your desires and the voice of your resistance, because they're both your voices. And but one is pushing you forward while the other is holding you back.
So let's take some mundane example. I want to be fit. That's my inspiration.
Yes.
That's my motivation. But on the other hand, I have this voice in my head. Andy, eat this cookie. This cookie is delicious. So what do I do now? Do I just shut up? I'm not gonna listen to you, or I'm gonna pretend that the voice is not there. What do I do?
That's essentially what is going on with these different drives. We have one voice that does want to move forward, and another voice that, in a sense, is sabotaging us. And that voice of that saying, hey, eat this cookie, is looking for the short term gratification because there's a part of our brain that's built for short term wins and short term results. Because back in the hunter gatherer days or back before there was civilization, where we could focus on things that took years or decades to achieve, it was all about immediate and short term results. So there is a part of our brain that is built for that. But then there's also parts of ourselves that want more. We want to have that fit body, or we want to have that nice career, or we want to start a business that take years or even decades to develop. And so now we hit up against these two drives, one that wants immediate success and the other that wants long term. And it's really important to understand that we have to pick one. Like, we really can't pick both. We can't go for both the long term as well as the short term. And what I've learned when we do have these immediate wants, it really comes down to the fact that we want positive feelings or we want rewards that we're expecting from. So it helps to get those immediate rewards or the positive feelings other ways. And some of the ways is a person can take that long term goal and break it down into milestones and reward themselves after each milestone. So it's like getting the cookie at each milestone. Or another thing a person can do is regularly look back at the progress and effort they've already made. And because a lot of times our brain it ignores all the effort and progress we made and only looks at how far something is. And so if we can shift our attention once in a while and be like, oh, wow, I've done this already, that can give us that reward that we're looking for, that immediate gratification. Though what I find that really helps is that a person should get those immediate gratification from other activities instead of just the goal that they're working on. They can get it from hobbies such as dancing and yoga and meditation and rock climbing or whatever. And because if a person can get the positive feelings from activities on a regular and consistent basis, they won't be so reliant on trying to finish tasks and goals so quickly because they're getting the positive feelings that they would get from the task or goal from other means, if that makes sense.
When you were saying that, first of all, I thought that this is really good idea that if you have a goal, you made it into smaller pieces and then you thank yourself for doing the work and give yourself some grati-
Gratification.
gratification. Yes.
Yeah.
And as it's going to enforce that habit of doing the work while you're striving for your goals. But also, what
Yeah.
really interests immediate gratification is when we were living in the caves, and it seems it's very primitive. And this is like a conflict of primitive and evolution. And if we want to
Yeah.
evolve, we have to stick with what we need to do. And those things usually do not give us pleasure at the very moment. And it's about how long we can prolong without giving us this pleasure and be
Yeah.
free. So, do you have any advices? How can we prolong that period of time as much as possible?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to confirm what you're saying. It literally is a battle between our primitive self and our evolved self. And if we want to evolve, it's really important that we work on this impatience or immediate gratification. In fact, studies show the people who can delay gratification
Mm.
are much more successful, they have better relationships, and they tend to be happier overall. So it's a really skill and it's really important to have. And as I mentioned, one of the things a person can do is try to get the positive feelings and rewards that they're trying to get from their tasks and goals from other means. Maybe they can do regularly yoga or meditation, or if they enjoy something like dancing, those things give us a lot of positive feelings. They give us a lot of immediate gratification, which can hold off us long enough for us to do the other tasks and goals. And the other thing is to develop what I call impulse control. So impulses are essentially this a reaction to want to do things and take action or get something right away. The impulse to check messages, there's an impulse to eat really quickly. And if a person can
Mhm.
get into a habit of resisting those impulses and wait before they act on an impulse and get into a pattern where they wait longer and longer, in a way, it, in a sense, is training themselves to resist immediate gratification and wait to get things waiting a little bit longer before they can reward themselves.
Do you think impatience can be dissolved completely? And I have another question, and that might be tricky. Do you think
Yeah.
if we would slow down our eating, as in postpone the immediate gratification, would it impact other areas of our life? Would we be able to slow down the gratification process in those areas?
I'm going to say yes to both of your answers. I think it is possible to remove impatience where it's not running our life anymore. But the challenge of impatience is that impatience is painful. It's
Mm,
so painful that we want to do anything to remove it. And because that impatience, it's coming from that want or desire to have something, we want to have that thing just to remove the pain that the impatience brings. So a lot of times we don't want things because it's going to be fulfilling. We want things just to remove the impatience or the pain of the impatience. And if a person can learn to sit in the pain that the impatience creates, over time, a lot of that pain is going to subside. And once the pain subsides, our want for having things right now and right away subsides as well. It's not easy. It takes work and discipline. But I am an example of someone who's done that because I used to be a very impatient person. Like I needed things right now, right away. And I couldn't even think 1 or 2 days ahead. Like I was always just thinking one day at a time. And that really limited my success. But when I realized that if I wanted to make like real progress, I had to get out of the impatient mindset.
mhm.
This is one of the ways I did it was to sit in the pain of the impatience and not actually try to get that instant gratification. And when it turning our attention to food, I think a lot of our impatience does come from food because as humans, food is something we need to survive. We can't go without it for more than a few hours, a few days. And a lot of our impatience is ingrained into our diet and our drinking, and it's wanting food right away in that moment. And if we can resist the temptations and the impatience to have food right in that moment, and the more we do that, the more that skill will get carried over into other areas of our lives. And that's another way that I worked on my impatience too, is to practice on food as well as other activities, such as when I'm ordering, instead of ordering food right away, I'll wait a little bit before I order. And once the food is served, instead of jumping right in, I'll wait before I jump right in. And instead of inhaling the food, putting as much food in my mouth as fast as possible, I focused on really eating and chewing slower. And all those things really help build the patience to be able to resist temptations as well as focus on things that were more long term.
That's very intriguing. I've never thought about it that way. How did your life change once you started to dissolve impatience? How did it affect you?
It really changed my life upside down because when I was impatient, I was always like in more or less in pain to try to get the next thing, the next reward. It was almost like being an addict. Like I needed to accomplish things just to get the reward of accomplishing it, or I needed to get things done to remove the pain of it just sitting around, half finished. And so, like an addict, I was moving from one task and activity or one thing that I needed to have to another. And each time I accomplished something or I got the thing I wanted, the reward or the positive feelings was very short lived until my brain had jumped to the next thing. And once I started becoming more patient, I wasn't like pulled in all these directions and I wasn't like forced to constantly be go, do, move. I could sit back and be more present, not just with my tasks and activities, but with people as well. And not only that, but when I had patience and I accomplished something, the joy of it lasted longer. Like I enjoyed it more. If you see the little bit of gray hairs that I got going on, that's from impatience. That's the stress that impatience created. And I feel like it's subsiding because I'm trying to live less in wanting things right away and having things move so quickly.
Many people talk about being present. What is being present for you?
I think present for me personally is about just enjoying what I'm doing or the company I'm in versus being in my head thinking about something that happened that I didn't like or worried about the future. It's like my thoughts are in the here and now versus what I'm going to do or what have I done. At this most basic level, that's what I see as present.
If we're in the moment, we are leading in life. But if we are in our heads or our emotions, it's our thoughts or emotions leading us through life.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, how do you work with people? What is, how do you analyze that they have issues with the issues that they have?
Yeah, the model that I follow is relates to our resistance that anytime we want to do something, our brain looks at that decision and filters it through a host of criteria. And if that decision is not in line with any of the criteria, it'll keep us from taking action. So a good analogy would be is to think about standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Any decision that comes up must go through them. If any of the members are against the idea, it will not pass. So if somebody's trying to do something and they're not able to do it, I think about all the different things that the brain looks at or all the different things it filters through to allow a person to do it. And we just go down one by one of what could the brain be using? What would be the reason the brain is using to stop this person from doing it? So some of the more commonly known reasons are things like limiting beliefs, habits, as well as comfort zones. These are things that are pretty standard and talked about a lot. But there's a lot more reasons that your brain looks at. It looks at things like self-image. It looks at how painful mistakes are, because for some people, mistakes are extremely painful. And the more painful mistakes are, the more resistant
Mm.
your brain is going to have for allowing you to do the thing. But it goes down even further, like it goes down to our core needs and things like that. So I just take a more of a diagnostic approach of, okay, this person's not able to do this thing. What are some of the key things that it's going to stop this person? And then look to see if this person exhibits those signs. And then based on what we think is stopping them, that's how we look at the solutions.
For example, I have a thought, I'm gonna read a book, and my brain literally gives me 5 reasons. 3 reasons are for no, and 2 reasons are for yes. Would it still pass?
It depends on it's not like a number of reasons for yes and no. It's like how much weight do those reasons have.
Mm.
So if the negative reasons aren't that big of a deal to the mind, there's a good chance that it'll pass. But if it was just one no reason and 4 yes reasons, but that no was like a big, powerful, strong reason,
Mm.
it can overpower the 4 yes reasons and not let you do it.
Oh, no. What's the heaviest reason for yes and no, respectively?
That's really hard to say. I think it really depends on different people. But the more core we go, like the more things that we hit at our core level, the stronger they have. And I think a great one has to do with our core needs. So as humans, we have various core needs like love, affection, attention, as well as physical contact. And some of them are really ingrained into us, like the desire for a mother's love or a father's guidance. And these are so core that when we don't receive them, it's painful. It's extremely painful to the point that it can make a person go crazy. Now, what's interesting is that if a person grows up without getting these needs filled, and the brain starts to realize, hey, these needs can't be met, they won't be met, or it's too dangerous or risky for them to be met, then the brain will stop us from achieving these needs. But what's interesting is that because they're core needs, they don't go away. They get louder and stronger and more painful. Now, the brain realizes that these needs can't be met, so the pain won't go away, so it distracts us from the pain. And one of the ways it distracts us from that pain is by making our lives difficult and creating problems. Because as long as our life is difficult and we have problems, we're not focused on this need not being met. And so this is the reason why a lot of people sabotage and procrastinate to distract them from themselves from these core pains that aren't being met. So this is going to be a very powerful reason for why our brain stops them because it like hits us at our core. So this is like one example. Another example has to do with self-image. So a lot of people create this self-image of being smart, intelligent, and tech savvy, or that they're a great artist, musician, comedian, or they're a great speaker or have a great story. But they'll rarely study, apply their skill, or put themselves out there. Why? Because if it doesn't go well, or if they experience difficulty, then it means that they're not this great image that they created for themselves. So it's much easier to not do anything and hold on to that image of being great than to do something and prove that self-image wrong. And so that's actually like a core thing that's going on where our brain is like really trying to protect us
Mhm.
from doing anything that could damage our self-image. So those things are like some of the deeper stuff that are going to override a lot of other reasons.
Perfect explanation. I have two questions. The first one would be about copain, and the second one is about self-image. I will start with
Okay.
the pain. If we have some core pain that is unprocessed, it's very likely that it will be manifested somewhere in the body. Is it
Right.
possible that the brain, to protect us from this pain that is felt in the food, it will change how we walk? Is it possible? Like there is some trauma that we're running away from, and we
Yeah.
can feel that pain in the food. So
Yeah.
obviously that would impact our ability to walk. Is this something that
Right.
is possible?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So when we have unprocessed pain, or if we have like core needs that aren't being met and it creates pain, and our mind is shutting that pain away, so we're not paying attention or dealing with it, that pain manifests. And it can manifest in many ways. It can manifest mentally, it can manifest emotionally, and it can manifest physically. And so physically, it can manifest pain in our bodies. We could have headache and have migraines, and like you said, pain in our foot. And that affects us from doing certain things. In fact, right now, I'm working with a woman who has unprocessed trauma from, I won't go into the details, but she had stuff happen to her when she was a young child that she ignored. And she's much older now. She's in her 60s. And she ignored it for all these years. She's done a lot of different personal development work and healing work. But one specific area of her life she didn't work on and she just ignored. And now she's just in intense back pain. She's got so much back pain. And even though she's seeing the chiropractor and stretching, it's not working. So I'm helping her work through that trauma because that trauma wants to be worked through. It wants to be released and healed. And it's manifesting as back pain for her because it's telling her, hey, you've ignored me for long enough. It's time to look at it. And if you don't, then this pain's going to continue to be there.
Do you think that people are afraid to face this pain and are using personal development as a coping mechanism?
Personal development as a coping mechanism.
I've seen people use
Yeah.
spirituality as a coping mechanism.
I think 100%. So what's really interesting is when we're distracting ourselves from pain, we're not the ones actually doing it. It's our unconscious doing it. It's essentially our defense mechanism. So you know that we have a defense mechanism, right? And you know that it's designed to protect us, correct? But what is it really protecting us from at the most basic level? It's actually protecting us from pain. Like I said, we can have mental pain, emotional pain, and physical pain. Now the thing is, the defense mechanism doesn't it's like it's a simple on-off switch. It
Mhm.
doesn't rationalize or reason if the pain is good, whether the pain is healing pain or if it's growing pain. It just says if there is pain or potential for it, block it. So when we have emotional pain coming up, the defense mechanism is going to block it. And then the emotions want to come up for a reason. It wants to be heard. But the defense mechanism just goes, it's a pain, so I'm going to block it. So we can have this battle going on where the emotion wants to come up, the defense mechanism wants to block it, and we not really realize it. And so, yes, we can run away from pain, but a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. It's our defense mechanism that's trying to do it. And there are many ways we distract ourselves from it or not look at it. And one of the ways is what you mentioned is doing personal development, spiritual work, or even getting caught up in work. And, I personally believe these high achiever driven individuals, they're not doing it because they're running or wanting to get something. They're doing it because they're running away from this pain. And they don't even realize it. It's all happening unconscious. It's their defense mechanism saying, hey, let's put our attention to getting work done, being productive, doing spiritual work, personal development work. And as long as we keep our focus on that, we don't have to deal with this pain.
That's amazing, isn't it? How the human mind works, the brain. It seems that the thing we must need to do is the thing that we least want to do.
Exactly. And that was the case with this woman. Like, she even told me as I was working with her, she's like, yeah, I just didn't want to look at that. I don't know why I didn't. I just kept pushing it to the side. And when I worked with her, even when we were trying to go back to the event and work through the pain, she kept getting distracted, getting tired, wasn't focusing. It was because her body was trying so hard, or her defense mechanism was trying so hard not to go there. And yes, the mind is fascinatingly complex. Like, it's just crazy, all the stuff that's going on underneath that we don't really realize that's actually influencing our decisions right here and now. And we might be thinking we're doing something for one reason, but it's really all these other hidden reasons that are going on.
Once again, that's a perfect explanation of what's going on between those two ears of mine. I had that
Yeah.
question about the self-image. Let's take, for example, some crazy example that somebody had some trauma and maybe depressed or bullied as a kid. To cope with it, he started to see him as a superhero, like a Superman or Batman. Obviously, that is not helping at all. And that is a
Yeah.
coping mechanism itself. How do we cope that? Especially when you look around, there's superheroes are super trendy usually, and it enforces this image. How do we stop running away from ourselves, pretty much?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of our self-image, we don't even choose. So as we're growing up, at a certain point, our mind think or comes to the conclusion that we're not good enough and thinks that this is the image that we need to hold to get people to like and love us, or for us to get the attentions we need or our needs to be met. And whatever image it picks, it's not saying that's absolutely the image we need to hold. It's just making a prediction. But it gets too confident and makes us and forces us to hold that image. And what I've learned is that people are going to like you regardless. Like, whether or not you are this great thing or not, most people are going to like you for who you are. So you don't actually need to hold this image, and you don't actually have to put up this front that you are this person or this successful whatever, or you're this smart, intelligent, tech savvy, great comedian, or you don't have to be all of that. We're doing all of that to get people to like us and respect us and get attention from them. But having traveled to over 100 countries, interacting with people from the furthest reaches of the globe, whether indigenous people in different continents, such as the Amazon or in Greenland, as well as people in Western civilization, what I noticed is the more that I was leading with my self-image, the less people were attracted to that. They could tell that I was trying to, I wouldn't say be fake, but I wasn't being
Mhm.
myself. And the more I've let go of these self images that my unconscious created and it's trying to force me and pushing me into, and the more I could just be present, the more people respond to me positively. So I think one of the great ways to work for a self image is to realize that you don't need that image that your brain created for you. And to also realize, actually, for some reason, all of us are trying to uphold this image. Even all these big influencers on your social media feed, they're pushing in an image that their unconscious is essentially forcing them to push. That's why their posts look the way they do and what they're saying, all that. They're just whatever. And so if we can ask ourselves anytime we're trying to do something, what image of ours is feeling threatened? What am I trying to protect? And do I really need to protect it? And is it worth giving up all these things to protect it? And usually the answer is no.
I have last question because our time is running out and I want to
Sure.
ensure people know where to find you. Do you think that carrying this self-image is tiresome, that it tires out greatly because of this internal conflict?
Yes. So a lot of times, like I said, the image that we have, we didn't even choose. Our unconscious chose it, and it's forcing us to uphold it. But a lot of times, that image that it's forcing us to uphold isn't in line with who we are. It's and when it's not in line with who we are, it actually does become tiring and exhausting, and it's a feeling of not being aligned. So we're being forced to project this image or show this image, but deep down, it's not fulfilling. And so it does become tiring and exhausting. And what's really crazy, it's like it's happening all on our own. It's all happening on an unconscious level. Like we didn't choose to force ourselves to uphold this image, and we didn't choose to not be fulfilled by it, but there's this thing going on. And so it can be challenging, which is why I do recommend people just let go of their image, no matter how much it thinks it's serving them or helping them. It's actually hurting them more than they think. And it's creating a lot more stress and anxiety because a lot of our stress and anxiety comes from the fact that we're trying to uphold this image and are afraid of being exposed or found out. And so if we can just let go of the image, a lot of the stress declines and we can be more ourselves.
That's another great advice from you, Cam. Where can people find you?
All right. So they can check me out on my website. It's simple. It's kamknight.com. So it's my first name and last name, KAMKNIGHT.com. And I've got a really great resource for your listeners. It's a guide. It's called 5 Ways to End Procrastination and Self-Sabotage. It's a free guide that your listeners can pick up at kamknight.com.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. I learned so much from you and I'm super grateful. And I'm super grateful for all the listeners around the world. Stay tuned for another episode of Golden Llamashow.